Whoa, you got a haircut, man. Jeez.
Routine lawnmower maintenance. But hey, my hair was getting longer than our videos anyways. And don't worry, I'll keep a handle on the time and try not to stretch out the video.
Hey, y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Guess who I am with? Dr. Scott Walter. Once again, there is so much to talk about in the robotics world. There was a recent interview between Lex Fridman and Robert Playter, who is the CEO of Boston Dynamics. And Scott wanted to talk about Handle and Stretch, which are two of Boston Dynamics robots, and how one of them works really well and the other one was designed and is super cool, but is not particularly suited to any job. And also whether they're going to take Optimus's job. I guess we can talk about all of that stuff. So welcome again, Scott.
All right. So thank you, John. Thank you for having me back. Yeah, there's a lot of other news today. I mean, it's like we heard about the Raptor 3 and, you know, that could definitely do a single stage orbit, but that's going to be a different video.
Right.
So today,
it was 350 bar, right? Crazy.
Yeah, 350 bar, and they increased the thrust quite a bit. So that's rather interesting. It did tell us the ISP, which we know what that is now, I think. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump right in here, and we're going to take a look. We're going to talk about Boston Dynamics today. Okay. Right. And normally when you talk about Boston Dynamics, of course, we talk about this robot here, Atlas. We're actually not going to talk about Atlas. Right. Hopefully
a quick warning to people. This is this was recorded at double speed. So if you're listening to us at double speed, you might want to slow down for a couple of minutes because it's going to be really fast otherwise.
It's going to be really fast. So we're not quite at that stage here yet, but this is the robot we're going to be talking about. This is the one that they call Handle, which is a really interesting robot. And the reason we want to talk about it is because the interview that that Lex had with Robert Playter, he talked about why this robot turned out to not be successful. And I'll let him say it in his own words first, and then we'll go in and sort of answer the questions and do a bit more of a deep dive. Right. So let's go ahead and try that. And here is the clip. And again, it might be a little bit fast, so you might want to put down to normal speed. It's already at 2x. And of course, you can always go to the original broadcast that Lex had together, and it's somewhere around the hour 30 mark.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the description, of course.
And it's got chapters in there anyways. Yep.
Out on Atlas. And so our first concept of Handle, which was a robot that was going to be on two wheels, so it had to balance, but it was going to have a big long arm so it could reach a box at the top of a truck. And it needed yet another counterbalance, a big tail, to help it balance while it was using its arm. So the reason why this robot sort of looks epic, some people said it looked like an ostrich, or maybe an ostrich moving around, was the wheels, it has legs, so it can extend its legs. So it's wheels on legs. We always wanted to build wheels on legs. It had a tail, it had this arm, and they're all moving simultaneously and in coordination to maintain balance, because we had figured out the mathematics of doing this momentum control, how to maintain that balance. And so part of the reason why we built this two-legged robot was we had figured this thing out. We wanted to see it in this kind of machine, and we thought maybe this kind of machine would be good in a warehouse, and so we built it. And it's a beautiful machine. It moves in a graceful way like nothing else we've built, but it wasn't the right machine for a logistics application. We decided it was too slow and couldn't pick boxes fast enough, basically. And
it was doing beautifully with elegance.
But it just wasn't efficient enough. So we let it go.
Yeah.
But I think we'll come back to that machine eventually.
The fact that it's possible, the fact that you showed that you could do so many things at the same time.
Okay, so that's the clip right there. And we'll go into what was in the upper corner there and sort of look at Stretch a little bit closer. Sorry, Handle. I'm getting the two confused myself. And what's going on with it? But the first thing is that I'm going to ask you, John, when you first saw this robot, what was your impression of it?
It's kind of beautiful, honestly. The first time I saw it was when it did that dance with the other robots. I can't remember which dance, but the way it has that big butt that moves around, and it's just kind of a gorgeously moving machine. Yeah.
I mean, I had two impressions. I mean, the first one is that whenever we talk about humanoid robots, when we talk about Optimus or Digit from Agility, you know, the question that always comes up is like, you know, why do they have to have legs? Why can't they just have wheels and everything else? And it's kind of ironic that the company that sort of started that whole thing with Atlas, you know, being a humanoid robot that was bipedal and able to walk around, suddenly they stick wheels on it. And I was like, aha, did they, you know, suddenly surrender and say, yeah, you know what, wheels is the way to go. So that was the first thing. So it's like, game on. Let's see what solution they came up with here. The other thing is it was graceful and everything, and I was mesmerized. I would watch it again and again. And the impression you get, of course, is that if you were going to have a foot race between the two, which one of these is going to win?
Right.
This would win by a long shot, right? It's just, it seems like it's no way it's slow. It seems to be very, very fast in many particular ways. And of course, it's only going to be in a limited environment where wheeled vehicles will work. The reason why I have bipedal is there are places that it's better to go with a bipedal kind of vehicle than it is with something that has wheels. But still, those were the two things, and you're wondering. And remember what he said at the very end. He said the reason why it wasn't successful is because it was what?
Well, he said it was too slow. That was
He didn't say it was too slow. He said it was too slow at picking boxes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So really,
specifically at picking boxes, yes.
Specifically at picking boxes. And we're going to begin to understand a little bit why. So if we look a little bit closer at this, I mean, we can just sort of see the beauty of how this thing works with the counterbalance on there to maintain the balance the whole time. And, he's really talking about Newton's laws here, that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So whenever this arm up here decides to move in one direction, you have to get a counterbalance back here, or a reaction force to keep it balanced when you're doing that. And that's basically recoil. And everyone just sort of knows that is if you've ever had to fire a gun, you get the recoil that's coming from it. You're always constantly having to fight against that. And so it's the same thing here, is that every single little movement that's going on here, they have to be able to push against it to get that reaction force to maintain stability. And they know how to do that, and they know how to do it really well. So it's just showing that what a great control algorithm is. However, they kind of picked the wrong application, and we can start to see a few things that are wrong. So part of this that they're trying to show here is that this is building a multi-SKU pallet. And what they're meaning is that, right over here, they have a pallet that they need to put boxes with different SKU numbers that are going to be coming from different bins, and then bring them on over here. Now, I'm going to ask you a simple question. If you were not doing this with this robot, and you were doing it with a human worker to do this, is this how it would be configured? Because this setup is a little bit contrived.
Yes.
You would not put this pallet over here.
But yeah, that's the first thing I was thinking, is you just have it right next to the other one. Yeah.
It's going to be a lot closer. So you're kind of wondering, it's like, why the big distance? And part of it is like, well, they're trying to show off the fact that it's able to move around. And, the thing with these kind of operations, when you're doing a picking and placing, you have kind of these different, long haul, short haul, and medium haul. And they're trying to show it's kind of a medium haul, but no one really does much medium haul. When I talk about a long haul, if you take something from one side of the factory to something else, there's an appropriate way of doing it. And it's not like having a worker go pick up one box at a time and bring it over. It's that you put it on a big pallet, so you move them all at one time. So you have one movement that's going there. When things are a little bit closer together, you can start talking about moving them one at a time, because it's a short haul that you can do very, very quick. And this is somewhere in the medium haul that you're just not going to really see. You're going to move that a little bit closer. But there's another reason they have to do that, and that is it takes up a lot of room to move around. It needs space, because, it's got to kind of back itself out. And then if you look at this right here, I mean, first, look how dangerously close that counterbalance or tail gets to hitting it. And then you're going to swing around, and you're going to drop it off and put it on in there. Now, part of the idea of this robot,
does get close.
It gets very close. Part of the thought process is that, right now there's generally two classes of robots. There is the robot that's bolted to the floor, the normal arm that's sitting there, that's immobile, that's static, that's doing an operation.
Right.
And then there's the other kind of robots, which are these mobile robots, which are platforms for moving things around. They look like an AGV. They're kind of flat, putting, and that's it. You put material on it and it moves around. It's more an autonomous driving vehicle than the traditional robot. And then there's the idea of like, well, what if we put an arm on the mobile robot? And when you do that, you got to remember that each piece of equipment has a different functionality, and you got to be very careful of trying to dual purpose something. And when they designed this, they probably had the idea to say, oh, look, we want this robot to be mobile. And the reason they want it to be mobile is they want it to be more deployable than mobile. The idea is that we're not using its mobility to carry equipment or parts from one part of the factory to something else. It's to deploy it to somewhere else, to bring it to where the work is. Because right now, when you have a robot that's fixed in the floor, the work has to come to it. And then it just sits there all day and it does the job. But now they're saying, well, a lot of times where the work is somewhere else. So we need to make it deployable. So that's why you would put it on a mobile platform. But then the I don't know if you want to call it, the genius idea came up and said, well, wait a minute. With these wheels, not only can we make the robot kind of go forwards and backwards and, sort of to the side here and there, we can also make it rotate. So we can get rid of the traditional first axis we have on there, and we'll just use that. And that's the first mistake right there. Because
really?
now
Interesting.
Yes, they're trying to use the base because look, a lot of times when you pick something up, you have to rotate around to get to a different position, especially if they're very closely together. So in this case, you're sort of seeing that. And then of course, the other things you're seeing here is you see how awkward and long it takes to get it in that final position.
Yeah.
It's because the dynamics is trying to settle out. Also notice it can't quite get the proper orientation at the very end. It doesn't matter, it's just kind of dropping it off, but you can see it's not quite precise and it takes way too long to drop that thing off. That should be a very, very quick move when you're doing palletizing like that. And then it's got to get itself stable to get out of there. And now then it needs to do kind of the 180. Now, normally you aren't moving back and forth. And like here, this here, you could do more of an argument for mobility because you're saying, well, I've got all these different areas to pick from that I've got to build this box over here. But normally if you're doing a depalletizing or an end of line palletizing, this is going to be right next to that conveyor. Right. And you are just going to be moving it from here to there. And there's no reason for the base of your robot to move. So you want to have something that moves very, very quickly. So I'll show sort of an example of that is that, here's a simulation showing the way that you would want to do some sort of end of line palletizing. And I'm going to ask you, which axis is doing the most movement here?
Yeah, well, it's always the first because it's just
the first axis. You see, and so the first axis is key. It's doing the longer moves. You want them to be able to do it very, very quickly. And you see, you kind of need the speed every now and then, and that the robot's fast enough that it can keep up with the line, even when there's something slowed down because we're waiting for a pallet changeover or anything like that. You see, eventually it's able to pull that flow down very easily. The other thing you have is the ability to pick up multiple boxes at the same time, drop them off as you need. So you have a bigger end effector. You don't pick up one box at a time. You pick up multiple boxes because we know doing anything in parallel is going to make things a lot faster. So that's typically the way you would do it. And then the idea that you have the robot bolted on the floor and you don't make it mobile because the work is coming to it and it's not going the other way around. So that, unfortunately is kind of the reason why it ended up not working out, is because of the combination of that and trying to get those two together. So, I mean, we can just sort of see that, constantly always having to move a long ways to get back around the, and I'll just go ahead and let it run on there and just seeing it's taking too long to do the approach. So when it gets near the pallet, it takes too long to drop the box off. So most of the time should just be, as we can see here, is the robot, just moving from the pick point to there. And then it's like, everything is quick, right? It's down, it's over there, it drops it. So that's really why I was doing it. Now, the story doesn't really end there because I guess you could say they learned from it. First of all, there's a lot of maturity in the business model because they learned very quickly that this is not working and they didn't go for the sunken cost fallacy of, what do we do to kind of push this thing? You realize, what, it's not quite right. Let's learn from this. And that's part of the reason I want to do it is I want all of us to also learn from them because this is not dunking on Boston Dynamics. It's like, that was a beautiful robot. I loved it. And it's towards the end, he had like this little twinkle in his eye where he said, it's, I'll be back kind of thing. It's like, they're looking for another application, but they learned their lesson. And then that's where they came up with the next robot. And that is the robot, which is called Stretch. They went from handle to Stretch.
Right.
And it's brilliant. But the thing about it, which might be disappointing for anyone that's a fan of Boston Dynamics, it just looks like, a very traditional kind of solution. And you're like, well, where's the, what's new about this? Now, the arm, there is some unique properties in the arm, and there's the base here. And so what they have is they've got the mobile base, and the whole idea of the mobile base is to deploy the robot to where it needs to be. It's not to actually do the job. And then when the robot's there, it's like a traditional robot that you can see the first axis moves around. The arm is a little bit interesting because they have two elbows in there. So it's an interesting kinematic they put in there. They added an extra axis. And I think part of it is so they can actually get in some of these tight containers to move things around in there. So part of it is accessibility. Now they can move the robot a little bit out of the way if they have to, but they don't really use that base for the normal kind of movement. It's for the coarse movement. All the fine movement is being done by the robot. Now,
I was thinking essentially what you have is you have the traditional, it fixed in place, but it's just got a base that moves around. So,
yes. Now that is the battery pack, and it's a really heavy battery pack,
right?
Because they've got like 16 hours, and they want it to be heavy, because this thing is not going to get pushed around. You don't have the reaction force. So the way most robots work, they don't have to have a counterbalance because they're bolted to the floor. They've got their counterbalance is planet Earth. And that's the same thing that's happening here. So they're able to do that. And the mobile platform is omnidirectional, meaning it doesn't turn. It means like it turns the wheels and it can go side to side and forwards and backwards.
Right.
So it can move quite a bit. And this part here, it's like, it's almost unnecessary, but it's showing off. And I love it. And that is, they come over here and they're going to show how the robots are basically able to keep their TCPs fixed in space while moving the base. Cool. Yes, that is very nice. It doesn't require an extra hardware. It just requires the proper software to be able to do it.
Right.
And now the other thing they're going to show here, which is also a little bit more showing off, is you're going to see that this is omnidirectional for sure as it starts to move and go and slide around. But you see, that point is fixed in space while the base is going to do a circle, doing a circular motion on the floor.
Right.
I mean, it's just cool. So they get this great mobility. Now, they identified the application and they designed a really good robot for the application, no doubt about it. And so this is unloading of boxes from containers. So they have the constraint, and one of the constraints is they want to make sure this is about the size of a standard pallet. And then you have these gravity feed conveyors that you usually have to pull in to drop them off. So it's just, they connect it, they're able to bring it in. It's an elegant, really nice solution. You can see the reason why I have the double elbow in there is to make sure that they don't have to worry about hitting the top of the container or if they have to reach back or anything like that. So it's a little bit better for the reach. And of course, the other thing is the vision system that has to go with it to identify the boxes to be able to pull them out.
Right.
I can see why they're getting so many orders of this thing. It's a nice solution. And they're using the fact that they can do perception to take care of it. So that's what I really want to do is show the evolution of you working on one design that, I mean, there was absolutely a lot of love that went into building that thing, a lot of sweat, and like everyone was probably said, this is just so cool. And then they realized, it doesn't work. We have to change direction now. And they did it, and they came up with something that's really nice. And you could see right in there, that was a tough reach to get in there. So you needed an arm that was able to kind of move parallel in there, and it did it very, very nice. That's the reason why they have that additional access on there. So again, it is just a nice robot, a very nice solution, which tells me, the future of Boston Dynamics, I think, is bright. They're making the pivot from being a pure research organization to now they're coming up with solutions. And as they start learning more about this, as they start getting in the factory, they're going to start understanding what are the kinds of applications that we need a robot like Atlas for. Where is that going to fit? Where is it that we, there's no way you can do it without it being the humanoid form factor? Or is it going to be a variation? Is there going to be another variation of handle to be able to do that? So, yeah, that's it. That's what I get to show you. Any questions, final thoughts?
Okay. All right. So first of all, I guess I'd watched this and I was a little bit underwhelmed by, Stretch, the second one. I'm getting confused between the names myself now. But I was like, but now that I look at it more, number one, the double elbow system is kind of beautiful. But number two, it's like, it's genius because it's all of the traditional Fanakuka robots, things like that you bolt in place to a spot in the factory, and then you build the factory around it. But it's like, why bother doing that? This thing will just go wherever it needs to go.
The whole idea is deployable, and to be deployable, the whole controller, the power system, everything has to be there because you don't want to have to plug in anywhere. So you have to design a robot for that to be able to have the the right kind of power requirements. In many cases, they try taking the traditional robots, and traditional robots are like 480 volts or 380 or something like that, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, that's how are we going to get a battery pack for that? So that's why the cobots are usually 110 or smaller voltage, so it's a little bit easier to come up with something that's deployable. And again, the idea of doing this, of integrating it, because there are mobile robots, and then there are some robots and people bolt them together, but then they're kind of not aware of each other. And it's an integrated package. So that base is well aware of the arm that's up above there. So the whole kinematic tree is understood, the dynamics is understood, which is why they can do that trick. Now, I'm not quite sure why you need it, because I'm looking at it, I'm saying, well, they're really just kind of showing off. I can't think of an application you need that for, but someone will find an application for it. I know, because there are cases of robots that do stuff a little bit different than you expect that becomes very important in the shop floor. And some of those are examples that normally you carry a tool to a workpiece and you operate on it. But then occasionally you actually have a fixed tool and then you carry a workpiece over to it.
Right.
And you'll see it in spot welding. And sometimes when they carry a windshield around, they want to put sealant on
that's
it.
exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Is something like putting a window in place would be a place where the robot could put it and then back off so that the human could attach it, to the actual.
There could be there could be applications like that, and that's a case where they call it a carried path, where the actual path is being carried, and the kinematics for that is like completely inverse. It's a straightforward way to do it, but a lot of controllers can't do it out of the box, and so you need to know what you're doing. They're showing that, and of course the idea of the double elbow. So you've got basically a rotation here, which is your typical shoulder, your typical elbow, and like a second elbow, and then your wrist is over here. Right. And so most everything is lying in a plane like it's supposed to. They don't have the fourth axis, what would be typically like the fourth axis in a lot of them, because it's a palletizing kind of application. You don't need that. Right. So they really get what they need. And then right here, they have what is either a camera system or it might be a LiDAR for scanning what's going on. So this thing is getting, I don't know if you noticed that when it was moving along in there, it was taking a picture of the environment while the robot was dropping it off. So when it's turning around, you see there's a camera flash in there.
Yes.
That camera post back there isn't really looking at what the robot's doing. The robot's got that under control. It knows where that is. It's like, oh, the arm's out of the way. Let me get a picture of the state right now.
Yeah.
And so it's getting that, and then it's processing it. And then the robot, by the time it's done with that pick, it knows what the next pick is going to be.
Right. Okay. That makes sense, because it is, and the interesting thing is it's actually taller than the arm is by default. So
yes.
So I guess that gives it a clear view, because if the boxes are stacked to the top of the pallet, it can still see over the top.
Yes. And again, it's on the same platform as the first axis of the robot. So it rotates with the robot, as we can see there. Right. So when the robot goes to the outboard position, it's already in there in a perfect position to take that shot. So it's not really monitoring the robot, it's monitoring the environment. And, there may be that it could rotate around to sort of see the robot if it has to, but it's a solution that they put together for this particular case, and they thought out all the elements that are needed, as opposed to kind of cobbling something together. So they really thought about, let's integrate the whole thing together. These usually have the same kind of dimensions. So you know what those dimensions are. So you build your robot for that. You build that post to make sure it's tall enough, but not too tall, all those things. You don't get out there in the field and suddenly realize, oh, I didn't know they made the containers these short or this high, It's like, you got to know these things ahead of time. They've obviously done the research on how that's going to work. And again, very nice, very elegant solution.
Yeah. I also like the left-hand one. Before it started, it actually dragged the conveyor into position itself.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes.
So, right at the right there.
Everything.
Drag
exactly. It's bringing that in and just dropping it off. And then usually that might be tied into the rest of the conveyor system that just goes off to wherever the sorting is. So it's being used in companies like DHL, where they're just unloading these deliveries coming in, and then it's just going through a big sorting conveyor. Or there may be, something else at the other end, of either workers from there that are picking it up and putting it somewhere else, or maybe another robot that might be the end. But I think in this case, it's already tied into another conveyor system, and off it goes. And then you just want to unload it as quickly as you can. And so these will be like fixed loading docks that they're just moving around whenever they're available, and they go in. So,
and this is it's pretty genius here, because this is one place that a traditional fixed in place robot just can't work, because it can't go inside the semi truck to get the boxes.
You can't. Yeah. And you have a lot of situations where you may have a robot that's only operating 20% of the shift.
Right.
And it might be that, it really is going hard for like an hour or two, and in 6 hours it's sitting there doing nothing. As opposed to, it works for 20 seconds and then it doesn't do anything for the next 80 seconds. And then just, in that case, it's like, well, it is kind of busy and it has to be there. But if it's only doing something for a short period of time during the morning and the rest of the day it's doing nothing, you would like to deploy it somewhere else. So you need a way to have the deployability. And the traditional robots aren't set up to do that. So, and they've been talking about this for a long time, doing robots like this, and it's nice to see more examples of it.
Yeah. And a pretty genius application by, putting the batteries in the base so that you've automatically got a very, very heavy bottom weight to counterbalance the potentially fast motions on top.
Right. And the other thing is, of course, it's four-wheeled. So that means you don't have to worry about the balance of the tipping. And of course, the one solution they could have had here with handle that there's another kind of mobile wheeled robot that's out there that does the same thing. They could have put a third wheel or a caster on that. And now, if anyone from Boston Dynamics has made it this far into the video, they're probably retching at their desk right now. It's like, how could you even say that? I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, you don't want to have to put the caster on there, but I mean, that's what you do is you put a third wheel sticking back here. That probably would have been able to make the solution without doing that. I don't know how much it would have improved it. It's a potential solution though.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, this is, again, we're in a situation where this is an absolutely beautiful robot, but they built something to be beautiful and as a research project, but not as a practical application. And then they were like, well, we don't know exactly how to use this. So,
I think it was maybe a little bit of both. So I wouldn't say it almost seems like it's a solution looking for a problem. They had an idea for logistics and they thought it would be good and they came up with it and then they found out it wasn't. So there was a little bit of a research and they were trying to solve a problem. They realized, the first attempt we kind of failed. And then they did a little bit more research. They learned some things along the way and said, aha, we know how to do it. And they're probably disappointed. It's like, we have to go the more traditional robot role right now. But eventually they might come up with some, I have to say, okay, Stretch is not exotic like Handle is. Right. But still it's unique. Still, it's got some nice characteristics to it.
Yeah. And you can see where they learned some of the, the arm, although the arm is actually more sophisticated, I think, in Stretch than it is in Handle. It appears to be. Yes. Because the robot is not as mobile. It has to be a little more mobile in the arm.
And there is one more thing I want to point out about this. I sort of forgot. It's like, how big is the arm?
Wow. Potentially infinite. I mean, it's kind of weird.
Well, I mean, as far as the reach, but I'm talking about, the actual physical dimensions of the arm. Right. You see, this here is the arm right there.
Yeah.
They do have something that rotates there, but for the most part, this is like the whole mobile platform, and that's your arm. So in some ways, your arm is actually pretty small, and this thing is like really big. They're kind of out of balance. Right. Whereas with Stretch, they really changed that the base is really small, and then you do have something which is a pretty big arm. So when you're looking at that, it's like, I mean, that seems like it's a teeny tiny arm that's going on the end of this very, very big thing.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So the question, I guess I could go ahead and stop sharing for quickly. The question du jour is this competition for Optimus, or are they going to coexist in the world peacefully and happily?
Oh, they coexist. They coexist. Okay. This is not a job for Optimus at all. So, I mean, if we go back to this thing that, what I was showing before with, the Kuka robots going around picking up those boxes, Optimus is not optimized for that. Right. That's something that has to go very, very, very fast. The idea of Optimus is to do tasks which are not supposed to be really, really fast, that human scale kind of things, not super fast, not things that are very heavy, and also be deployable to be able to move around a little bit if it has to. So absolutely not. So again, it's sort of like saying, is Optimus going to take over the spot welding robots that are in the factory? It's like, no, they're still going to be there. Okay.
Right.
They're still going to be there. The only thing is that Optimus might be integrated a little bit better with them as far as the part loading and unloading and a few other things. But those traditional industrial robots will stick around for quite a while. Right. The only thing that will change with the industrial robots is the way we program them.
Right.
So that's what Optimus is going to bring to the industrial robots. It eventually is going to be just as easy as you go up to one of these monsters and just say, all right, spot weld that thing over there. And then it'll go, okay, I see it's coming in, but where do you want me to weld it? And then, you just say, go read the CAD files, figure it out yourself. And, you'll just go in there and look around and okay. So, I mean, it'll be that kind of thing rather than us laboriously sort of teaching where those positions are, that they'll be able to do a lot of these different tasks.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it is interesting because, when you start to look at something like Stretch, you realize how much better it is than a human to do the job it's doing. And of course, humans have been doing it for a long time, but it takes a lot of effort. And that's going to be faster and more efficient than a human doing it, and can work longer and not make mistakes and all that kind of stuff.
And it can work, like they say, in 120 degree Fahrenheit.
Because
really hot in those containers. In the wintertime, it gets really cold.
My son was unloading like semi trucks and things. And in July in Georgia, that is not a fun job. It is really miserable.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly.
So yeah.
And I'm assuming it's at least as fast as a human, maybe a little bit faster. It's just that it's able to be consistent and doesn't have to take a break or anything else.
Right.
So it'll pay itself off. And the people who are normally doing that are actually the operators. So go out there. There's a video from Boston Dynamics along with DHL that sort of talks about one of the pilot examples they did, and the operators love it. It's like they've got a little iPad, they go over, they're able to teach it. It's like, it makes their job so much easier. So what's happening is they're not losing their jobs are getting better.
Right. And then, the job for Optimus would be, because this thing is able to do picking and things like that, but it's more kind of more fuzzy jobs where it's sort of like you got to pick some parts out of a bin.
You pitch in. Yeah. I mean, yes. So are you talking about, the picking kind of jobs that Optimus could do?
I'm thinking of a job that's similar, but would require a human being, usually with a
lot of times it might be like light assembly kinds of things. Yeah. So you're picking something up, the parts may be kind of random. So you have to pick out the right part, get it in the right orientation, drop it off. And it's kind of low payload, but there's also some other value add in there that once you pick it up, it's going into something else. And there's some other operation that either you're maybe doing a process on it, or you're loading it into something and you have to load it properly and then, push a button, and let it go. So there's a little bit of that going on. And of course, Optimus will be general purpose. Optimus will be able to go over to those shelves and pick up boxes and then load a forklift if needed, like at Costco or something like that, where you may see a situation like that. And it's just that it won't be optimal for doing that all the time. But every now and then there's like a job that just has to be done for a minute or two. And, sometimes whoever is there, sometimes it's the manager. It's like, this has got to get done. So, even the manager has to go over and do it. So there will be these odd jobs that Optimus will do every now and then. Well, but it won't do it as a dedicated job. Definitely won't be.
Okay, so it's more of a floater kind of I'm thinking about that just because you brought up Costco, because we went and bought a shed to put in our backyard today. And it didn't even have a weight on it. I think it was about 350 pounds at a guess. And so it took me plus 3 of the employees at Costco to pick it up and put it on the back of the truck. And that's the kind of thing where Optimus can go do that, because now maybe they couldn't pick up that much because it's beyond its weight capacity, but something along those lines where it's like,
but so long as they're coordinated.
Yeah. I guess that's true. You could put 6 of them on there instead of 4. It'd be fine.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thing that we saw Stretch doing there, how they went up and did this together. So the two of them, they're communicating. They kind of know what's going on. It'd be the same thing as like, well, you had 3 workers. Well, then you just have 3 Optimists. And the other thing that Costco must be sitting there thinking about is like, oh my God, when we send those people out, workman's comp, and, if anything happens, a slip disc or something like that. So a lot of these is like, we don't want the liability and the potential insurance pitfalls, so that when something like that comes along, just send the bot to go ahead and do that, because it's an unstructured environment. You're going out in the parking lot, a car you've never seen before, all this, everything can go wrong. The best thing is let the robot do that rather than having a person that could potentially hurt themselves.
Okay. I like that. So I mean, they're both of these. The beauty of it is that we need all of these robots, not just one of them. It's not like one is going to take over the world. It's like Optimus is going to be really good for the kind of work that it is suited for, but Stretch is going to be really good. You can already see it. I mean, that's like, I sit there and look at it and go like, good Lord, I would much rather have that robot do that job than me. I don't want to have to go into that truck.
And the thing you're going to see is that this is what's going to happen pretty soon. When you go order your package on Amazon, and it's going through DHL, your box is probably going to be unloaded at some point by Stretch and put onto something. And who knows, it might be delivered to your front door by Digit, by the agility robot, which we will hopefully be getting a video on them pretty soon. Yes. Because that's also
folks at Digit, say yes. Say yes to the
yes, because we love humanoid robots, and there's a lot of space for a lot of different kinds of applications in there, a lot of different form factors that are working out. And they're not going to put the industrial robots out of business. The industrial robots will probably improve as a result.
Yeah. I mean, you can already see that. I mean, if you just took the Boston Dynamics robot and you took off the base and stuck it on a fixed base, it'd be a pretty effective, industrial robot.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So think about it. The Kiva robot will probably end up picking up your order somewhere from the Amazon warehouse, loading it on a truck. It goes somewhere else to another distribution center. Stretch is going to unload the thing. Somewhere goes out, ends up in the van. That van gets driven out, and then it just goes ahead and walks it up to your front door.
Right.
It's going to be robots all the way.
Yeah, and the van, hopefully will be driving itself eventually. So
eventually,
yeah. Digital will be hanging out in the back of the van, and when it stops, he'll open up the door and take your package and get back in. So, wow, that'll be very Jetsons or something when that happens. When a robot comes up to your door and drops off and it won't even have to take out its phone and take the picture. Like they do that. It'll just have like a little boop, and take the picture as it goes.
Yeah, it's going to record the whole thing. Yeah, you'll be able to sit there, and you'll probably, because if it's done through Amazon, it'll be set up with your Ring. And like your Ring, you can watch the delivery happening real time right now.
That's cool. All right. Well, that is really interesting. It's just fascinating to see. I think what we're, a lot of people are really blown away by large language models, diffusion models, pictures, language, but we're seeing a kind of a renaissance in robots right now too, like the actual, and then really soon we're going to see the large language models get combined with these robots, and that's going to be super
probably
cool.
Sooner. That interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day, sort of talking about that, and the fear of what AI is going to do. And right now, the software has sort of gone ahead of where the hardware is. It used to be like, the robots mechanically were way ahead of the software. We're just waiting for the software to catch up. And right now it's like, wow, way up here. And we aren't anywhere close. We have to design much better hardware to really be able to do what we'd like. Well, maybe not like, I don't know, depending upon it. So right now, the AI doesn't quite have the agency that it needs, because it doesn't have the body to go into. But, it just got me thinking about, some of the applications you could be doing if you have a decent humanoid arm teaching a large language model how to weld, just like what you would do at a community college. You bring them in and your first couple welds are just horrible.
Right.
And then you start to learn the different process parameters, how to hold the thing in different metal, and you just kind of go through. So how long before you would be able to get that thing to learn to be as good as a normal welder,
right?
In the humanoid form factor. And then eventually when you get that, if you could take it to a traditional industrial robot arm, because that's also sort of the same thing that's going on. We don't know what the process parameters have to be until we go out and do a bunch of experiments. Right. But eventually the AI might be smart enough that it knows exactly what the process parameters are and exactly how to set that up. And then if we combine that with a humanoid robot, is a lot of the industrial robots that are set up to do the big welding. So, the big industrial robots will do 80, 90% of the welds, but there's always a couple of tricky welds. It's very hard for them to get into, and you still need a human to go in to finish off a few here and there. And now you're going to have, Optimus or Atlas or one of them going on in there and then learning to do that little simple seam and doing a beautiful bead.
Right.
And doing the tie-in and everything that has to be done.
Yeah.
So, that's going to be interesting. Just teaching it on that. Hopefully I didn't give anyone some ideas out there. Now suddenly we're going to find out it's like, oh no, all the robots can weld now.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's what the AI singularity will be. It's like we teach them to weld, and then they come around and they got welding things, and they're like, So, the Terminator won't be with guns; it'll be with welding.
Won't be laser guns; they'll be weld guns. Like, don't worry. It's like, so long as he can't find a ground, we're okay.
That's right. There you go. We'll just have to take all the
sure he's using
gas
the right
from
flux core.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll just take all the inert gas from them so they don't have any inert gas around.
Yes. No immersive welding on me, please.
There we go. All right. I think we can wrap it up on that lovely idea of the robots coming to weld you to death. So there you go. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Scott. I really did appreciate it. And I learned a lot. That was very cool to see how handle and stretch, something that was beautiful, but not quite aligned with what people needed, to something that's less original, but much more aligned and much more useful.
And then the understanding that, sometimes, that first axis is so important. They took it away. And they thought that redundancy would take care of it, because, we think in our bodies is that, like, the redundancy is if I need to turn my head, I can either do my eyes, my head, or that. But if you make me stiff and say the only way I can look to the left or right is I have to do this, that's kind of inefficient. You want to have some way of being able to do it really quickly.
Right. That is true. There you go. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much. Make sure you do the liking and the subscribing and all that stuff. Follow Scott on Twitter, Going Ballistic 5.
Yeah,
So
somewhere
there we
out
go.
there. Yep.
For some reason, 6 is always stuck in my head, but Going Ballistic 5. So there we go. Thank you, everybody. And we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.